Hello, everyone. Today's story is about how a girl's sister, who renovated a country house, suddenly became the center of attention, and everyone wanted it for themselves. However, when it was in disrepair, no one cared about it. Hi there. My sister and I weren't particularly close due to the age difference. She's 8 years older than me. She always tried to assert her superiority over others. About 5 years ago, we lost our parents. They left behind our father's apartment as an inheritance and a country plot in a remote summer house community. My sister got married, and our parents gave her our father's apartment. We'll transfer the ownership of our apartment to you, said Mom, trying to divide the property equally between her daughters. However, we couldn't reissue the documents for the apartment, and our parents died in apartments, and our parents died in a car accident. Lyra immediately told me that we'd have to sell the parental apartment. Understand me correctly. I have kids and a husband. We need to expand our living space, so I need the money. I can sell you my share, said Lyra. At that time, I didn't have that much money. I was in my last year at university, living in a dorm, and working in a dorm, and working in my free time. In any case, I didn't want to take out a loan, and no one would have given me one. The apartment was put up for sale. As for the country house, turns out my sister wasn't interested in it. I visited this country house. It's in a remote place with no proper living conditions. If necessary, I can sell it at a lower price. I decided to keep the plot. Selling it would only get me peanuts, but at least it would be some property from our parents. After selling the apartment, my sister got a small sum. We hardly communicated, only exchanging calls on holidays. About 4 years ago, my husband and I got married. As they say, my husband is a country guy. He studied in our city and decided to stay. We bought a one-bedroom apartment with the money we received as wedding gifts, my husband's savings, and the proceeds from selling the apartment. Housing wasn't a problem, and that was the main thing. My husband and I were close. His parents welcomed me warmly, so we often visited them. They lived not far from my country plot. One day I suggested to my husband that we go there and see if any other plots remained. He happily agreed, as he had long dreamed of swapping city life for a country house. His parents had their house and garden, and we wanted our own to be independent of his father and mother. It turned out that the summer house community had expanded in my absence. They installed electricity, built a good access road, and added a water supply. Some pretty houses were visible here and there. Our forgotten, dilapidated shack looked pitiful. My husband enthusiastically surveyed the plot, not letting me get close, and went to talk to the neighbors. Returning home, he told me about his plans for renovating the country house. I wanted him to turn this neglected plot into a proper home. Work began, and my mother-in-law provided invaluable help. My father-in-law and husband dismantled the old building, fixed the water supply, and cleared all the weeds. Practically everything was done by their own hands. Practically everything was done by their own hands. For several years, my husband and I spent summers in the village with his parents, helping with their household and working on our own plot, realizing our dream. Over the course of 3 years, changes occurred on the plot. In the area where the old structure stood, there was now a beautiful 2-story house with a large terrace. They added a new extension to the house, and now there's a toilet. The cozy plot had neat flower beds. From April to October, we could spend time at the country house, although there was still much work to be done. Unexpectedly, in early May, Lyra called me. Her words left me speechless. There are photos of your country house on social media. Did I understand correctly that it's our parents' country house? Valeria clarified. Then she continued, You've settled in well. Are you against hosting us with the kids for a week? I also happen to be a corner of this country house. Let's say I gave it to you for free. Debts need to be repaid. I was taken aback by such audacity and said I needed time. I told my husband about the conversation with my sister. He was aware of my relationship with her, but hadn't met her personally. You know, I can't forbid you from talking to or inviting your sister. If you want my opinion, I don't approve of her actions, which means I'm against it. My husband said, My husband said, She sold you the country house. It's no longer her property. She knew other people wouldn't pay her more for that old shack, so she sold it to you for a pittance. I won't even mention how she deceived you with the parental apartment. In this regard, I completely agreed with my husband. I had no intention of inviting my sister over, and I said I would think about it out of sheer bewilderment. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Wouldn't you be taken aback? A few days later, she called me herself. When can we come? She started right away. Never. This country house has nothing to do with you. I paid you for it, not much, but it was your decision. Well, that's how it is. You forget my kindness. What is this? My sister shouted into the phone. You'll come to me eventually, and I'll remind you of this country house, she whispered threateningly and hung up. On what grounds did she think I would come to her asking for help? Besides, it was Lyra who ruined everything. If my sister had just called and asked to visit with the kids, I might have agreed. After all, they are blood relatives. Overall, she started attacking and provoking me for a conflict, as if I owed her something. Is this how family should behave? Here's a story about how the mother-in-law accused the girl and her husband of heartlessness when they refused to support their adult brother. My husband and I have been married for about 10 years. He's 34 and I'm 32. We live in our 2-bedroom apartment, a typical Khrushchevka, bought on mortgage. It's been enough for the 3 of us. And our little son just started school this year. He got his own room, and we moved to the living room. In general, a regular family living peacefully until my mother-in-law decided to make some adjustments to our lives. My husband has a brother, still a high school student, finishing 11th grade this year, named Kirill. The guy is terribly spoiled because my mother-in-law couldn't conceive for a long time and gave birth to him late. Naturally, he has been pampered all his life. Since my husband is twice his age, they don't really interact much. They don't share common interests, and we don't understand their parenting methods. Kirill is allowed to do anything methods. Kirill is allowed to do anything. He doesn't know what punishment is, and he never says thank you to his parents. He believes everyone owes him everything. Naturally, my husband gets upset because even in regular situations where a good talking to is needed, everything is forgiven and he's even rewarded. For example, he has plenty of bad grades, doesn't want to get up for school in the morning, but he's promised new gadgets if he starts studying properly. People are different, and he got it tough with his mother while we were raised much more strictly. So it's hard to understand them. Kirill knows nothing about independence. He doesn't do anything around the house. His mom makes his bed in the morning. He can't even boil dumplings. He just comes to the kitchen, sits, waits for food to be served, and then without saying thank you, leaves silent. And then without saying thank you, leaves silently. If he needs to go to the clinic, he only goes with his mom holding his hand. Clearly, there's an excess of care. This perfectly healthy young man can take care of himself and his mom. She's getting older, tired, but there's no talk of it. The most he can do is pour himself tea and call his friends. He also eats everything his mother cooks after coming home tired from work. Kirill is still a little boy for her. If his mother doesn't remind him, he might forget to take a shower, and he doesn't even know where his clean clothes are. Can you understand the level of the problem? The parents live outside the city. This year, Kirill will need to enter college, and the way to the city is not close. Commuting every day is not an option, so they definitely need to find housing. My mother in law started hinting from afar that he should live with us. She believes it's logical. It's hard to get a dorm, and Kirill has never lived alone. He can't even iron a shirt for himself and will take care of the kid, feed, and water him. I tried to object. Our apartment is small already. Where can we accommodate another adult? I'm already tired from 2 jobs, and there are lessons to teach my son. This is another mouth to feed, to wash for, to clean after. In response, my mother in law suggested putting another bed in the bedroom with our son, saying, "Let the kids live in the bedroom." In her eyes, Kirill is almost the same age as our son. I couldn't find suitable words, and my husband told his mother that he doesn't intend to babysit another essentially adult who can't do anything. The only thing he agreed to is helping in truly difficult situations, but he won't be a babysitter. He offered help in finding housing, but Kirill needs to get used to living independently. But his mother doesn't hear anything. She doesn't understand how her grown up child can live on his own, who will warm up his lunches and wash his socks. My husband reminded her that he also left his parents' home once, learned to earn money, pay for an apartment, and buy food. Meanwhile, his parents weren't very interested in his affairs and didn't offer their help. In short, they couldn't come to a unanimous decision. The parents considered us traitors, and I got covered in mud from head to toe because they think I manipulated my husband and am to blame for everything. There were no more calls, and we were informed that they don't want to communicate with us, don't expect us to visit, and will exclude us from the will. Well, so be it. So, here's the story of how I decided to spend the money on myself instead of giving it to my sister. Now, I'll have to move out of my parents' place. At 18, I'm juggling studies and a side gig, trying not to constantly ask my ever helpful parents for money. Helping out my sister with her child and niece is always a joy. especially our beloved Dasha, the most destitute and deprived of all the orphans and poor in the world, according to my mom, at least. As for me, if I were to describe my sister in one word, it would be a softie. And this softie, from early childhood, figured out that tears are an excellent tool to get what you want. We had some awful teachers in school, intentionally giving my sister low grades. On the side of light and higher justice was, of course, Mom, ready to punish any of those nasty villains. They, however, choosing the lesser of two evils and thoroughly tired of fighting, went for peace, reluctantly giving my sister passing grade. To our mom's great displeasure and surprise, who devoutly believed in Dasha's exceptional ability to get a scholarship, my sister studied as a paying student, which, by the way, didn't surprise me at all. The battle between light and darkness under the banners of my mom continued throughout her education, so it's no wonder that in the end, my sister passed all the necessary exams, finally graduating from the university, much to the delight of all the teachers who preferred exams to exhaustion. My mom personally took care of Dasha's employment. Mom and sister worked together in the same department of the same company with other economists. This way, Mom could continue the fight against injustice, making sure that my sister didn't overwork and consequently didn't get exhausted. My dad and I, on the other hand, turned a blind eye to the situation. While during my sister's school years, my dad at least tried to influence the outcome. After a flood of groans and female tears, he washed his hands of the sisterly, maternal union, leaving it untouched. What truly surprised me was that someone who probably had nothing to lose proposed to my sister. Certainly, she wasn't unattractive, but her character could easily serve as an open guide to action for anyone who had ever wanted to get rid of an exhausting number of persistent suitors. However, I congratulated and genuinely marveled at it. My sister, on the other hand, seemed to glow from within, trading the softy status for a love-struck one. The wedding followed all the prescribed canons, including a car, a restaurant, and other implicit points. The groom was a very handsome guy with a good sense of humor and eyes filled with love. A perfect match. Since the newlywed already had his own apartment, they decided to live there. The young couple started living and building their wealth. I learned about all the events in their lives from Mom, who, by the way, didn't have much to share until Dasha got pregnant. Mom found new meanings regularly visiting the newlyweds due to my sister's sudden inability to cope with all the changes happening to her. Bliss and nothing else. Dad never stopped repeating during another gathering of Mom to sister. Just think, it's only the 4th month, but she acts like it's the whole ninth. Leave the young ones alone. They'll figure it out somehow. It's not like it's a cold. Then it would make sense. How would you know? You men are not given to understand the full complexity of this process. And she's at home just like a log, devoid of any compassion, sitting on the couch in the living room. Nerves all over the place, in a word, Mom echoed Dad. I don't know what kind of acts they were performing during the pregnancy, but by the time the long awaited baby arrived, the newlywed spouse had already changed his place of residence to his parents' apartment. The honorary position of the resident in my sister's apartment was taken over by Mom. She's just lounging around, complaining, Mom complained during her rare visits home. She could at least visit her sister and offer some help. She's there all alone, and besides, she just gave birth. She did give birth recently, but you've been helping her as if for a long time. And our little one has a father, not to mention her studies and part-time job. Well, something could be found. It's all your dad's doing, Mom retorted. To be honest, I did visit my sister a few times, brought gifts for her and the baby. While my sister was barely holding on in her chair, Mom fluttered around the apartment, and the baby was peacefully sleeping. And what was the point of intruding into their years? Polished union? After a month and a half, Dad ran out of patience. After talking to his son-in-law, he went straight to my sister, with great effort pulled his wife out of there, and her honorary place was once again given to the escaped husband. All attempts of Mom's resistance were suppressed on the spot by the threat of breaking the sacred union. Such impudence! They wanted to leave the granddaughter without a father. I'll quickly arrange a pastime for you. If you dare to visit the young couple again uninvited, don't expect mercy. Dad rarely erupted, so Mom was deeply affected by his speech. She stopped visiting my sister, but it was now impossible to reach her by phone. Unfortunately, the conversation with the father-in-law didn't save the situation, and my sister's marriage was soon destroyed. The ex-husband generously left his apartment to her and the baby. Hastening to leave the scene, he diligently sent money to my sister, of which she, of course, did not have enough. When the former mother-in-law threatened to sue for child support, the ex-fiancé declared that in money his child wouldn't be in need, but forget about living in the marital apartment. This tamed the former mother-in-law. Perhaps if the ex-husband had put her in her place during the marriage, his status today would be different. Let's leave the formalities. The essence is that my sister once again took the position of the destitute and deprived, and on legal grounds now demanded all the attention available to her. And at that very moment, I intended to go on my vacation. As I mentioned earlier, I tried not to take money from my parents. My main income was my part-time job, from which I saved money for my vacation. My friends and I were already looking forward to our trip to Murmansk, where we had long dreamed of going. The trip was planned for the May holidays. Tickets were bought, and the hotel was booked. My preparations did not go unnoticed. The shock reaction to what she heard was well reflected on my mother's face. "How are you going to afford that?" she asked. Naturally, she found my answer about the saved and honestly earned money for the trip at least unsatisfactory. That's when I found out who I am in her eyes. My sister and the baby are barely making ends meet, and here I am traveling around Murmansk. Instead of helping your sister when you have extra money, she's raising the baby alone. Every little penny is valuable to her. Who would have thought that with age you would turn into such a heartless person? To be honest, I was not surprised. Life battered Dasha at our place, and I can earn quite well. Fed up to here with Mom's double standards, when I return from vacation, I'll move to my own apartment, especially since Dad promised to help with finances for the first time. Although, who knows what will happen with mom? If she finds out that dad is helping someone else, besides my sister,